Loreheads, and welcome to the League, exploring the League of Legends lore from A to Z. My name is Rebecca.
And I'm John.
And I'm Mark.
And today we're talking about the weapon of the faithful, Aphelios, who was released December 11th, 2019. So he's just about a year now.
Yeah, he's a pretty new boy.
He's very new. I was really excited to get into his lore because he's so new. Because I had no idea what it was.
I was expecting a little bit more. He has a bio and a short story called You Are the Weapon. And that's pretty much it. I don't know why I was expecting him to have, like, a novella, and like, I always expect new champions to have, like, a bunch of crap.
I kind of expected that to be the exact same case, honestly. I was a little underwhelmed, but maybe that was my fault for, assuming.
Yeah, they've got, like, a little less time, I think, to figure out how exactly they fit into the universe, because I imagine they have some sort of idea of someone's overall place in the universe, but then over time they can kind of pull on the threads and then start inserting them into other stories.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably the better way to do it, honestly. You don't want to put out a bunch of plot lines and then, half of them get retconned or just don't make sense anymore. That's old Riot style.
Aphelios was interesting to me because I feel like I actually didn't learn all that much from his bio, because his gameplay is so intricate, and I was really determined to learn how to play Aphelios that I feel like I learned his backstory just trying to figure out how to fucking play Aphelios.
Interesting, because I don't fucking know how to play him, so maybe you can help enlighten me on some things. I'll be curious.
Do you think it works the other way, where now that we know the lore, we'll be really good at Aphelios?
That's it. All right, tonight we're all playing Aphelios.
Do you think he has more text in his lore or in his fucking abilities? Which one?
Honestly, I think there's more text in his abilities.
Oh, man.
It's funny. So there's also there's a really short cinematic, like a little teaser, and I think the top comment on it was like, anyone who plays him is going to be easy to kill because they're going to be too busy reading all of the text that comes with his abilities.
It's true. It's so true.
Yeah, really great.
Now, Aphelios is our first champion, I think, officially from Mount Targon.
Yeah.
It's a region that we've discussed previously, but we haven't actually had a champion from there.
Yeah, first Lunari as well.
Yeah, Lunari. That I hadn't really heard about that. I just assumed it had something to do with Diana. I still don't know.
That's correct.
That's a good assumption, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll dig in a little bit on a few of these points before we jump into his lore, because I feel like a lot of those things are going to help explain some of the terms used in his lore. Now, Mount Targon itself is the highest peak in Runeterra. It's said to be almost impossible to scale, but if you do scale it, people generally are rewarded with power or knowledge, or either way, if they do manage to scale it, they come back very changed, often as the aspect of some celestial being. Now, primarily the people who live on Mount Targon are called the Rakor, which translates to Tribes of the Last Sun. Now, they believe that many worlds have existed before this one, and all of those worlds fell to catastrophe, but when this sun is destroyed, there are going to be no more worlds. So they are really trying to protect this last sun as well as they can, and protect it from anyone being able to extinguish it.
So are suns just being destroyed, like, real common in Runeterra?
I guess up until now.
I feel like it'd be a kind of a big deal here on Earth, if the sun was destroyed.
Cataclysmic, one might say, That's fair. There is an aspect. And as we know, the aspects can die. So, I mean, maybe. That's interesting. That kind of casts the whole Lunari-Solari conflict in a different light. From my perspective, anyway. Yeah.
So, speaking of the Lunari and the Solari, the Lunari worship the moon. They believe that the world needs a balance of the sun and moon to live, and thus have been branded as heretics by the Solari, who exclusively worship the sun and believe that the moon just leeches power from it. Now, the Solari have essentially hunted down the Lunari to try and extinguish them altogether, and they've kind of been forgotten in modern day lore, at least they were until kind of Diana came around, and she's kind of been on a crusade to restore the Lunari, and she's the aspect of the moon. The Solari, they're specifically Rakor who devote their entire lives to worshiping the sun. So the reason they're kind of hunting the Lunari is they think that the moon leeching from the sun is going to cause the sun to go out, thus heralding in the final death of the ages, yada, 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 yada. The elite warriors of Solari are called the Raharak, and among them kind of Leona is the aspect of the sun, kind of as the foil to Diana. All right, so that's the basic background of Rakor, Targon, Lunari, Solari.
Yeah.
So who are the baddies?
Much like Demacia and Noxus, there aren't really baddies as much as...
I need everything in black and white, Riot.
I mean,
every side believes that they're doing things that are righteous.
I kind of think this is... I think there's a lot less nuance when it comes to this conflict, and I find it to be one of the more boring, like, large-scale organizational conflicts in League. I think because there's so little about what the real details of the Lunari and the Solari faith. So I don't know, the Solari come off really like one note villains. You know, it's very hard to find instances of, you know, I don't know. They're just kind of sitting there with their, I almost want to say mustache twirling, like, oh, yes, we got to purge the heretics. And the Lunari are kind of in the same way only portrayed as victims of this persecution, and I don't know anything about really what they're all about. So I don't know. I think Noxus is a way more interesting place, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of the Solari stuff, at least around like Leona, is a lot about protecting the weak, protecting those who aren't strong enough to protect themselves. And I think in their eyes, the Lunari are a legitimate threat to not just the world, but also kind of like their righteous way of life, which, you know, obviously any sort of religious zealot on any side will kind of come off as a villain because they're all very uncompromising. That's kind of by definition of being a zealot. If you believe something's strong enough, you're gonna fuck shit up to protect it.
Yeah, I mean, really, I think that's evidenced in Aphelios. So I guess should we dip a bit into his bio, because I think he's actually a good example of kind of what you're talking about. To be fair, sure, yeah. So Aphelios was born with a twin sister, Alune. Is that what we're saying on pronunciation? Not like Alune or anything like that.
Yeah, I think it's Alune. Yeah,
sounds right. They don't say it anywhere that I can find, but
it's also got kind of like a lunar type sound
right?
to it.
That's what I kind of assumed. Yeah. But yeah, so they're both born in Targon to the Lunari, so they were raised, obviously, under persecution from the Solari. They were both born during a lunar convergence, which is where the spirit world moon eclipses the physical moon. And so when they were born, obviously the Lunari held them up as, I think they call them children of destiny, or something like that. Really a big deal, I suppose. But yeah, so they both get raised up in the faith. Aphelios gets raised as a warrior, and Alune gets raised as a seer. And eventually Alune has to go off to go do seer duties. She's got important moon duties to take care of. And when it happens, Aphelios, it says his faith wavers. And he seems to get kind of lost emotionally, I guess we'd say. And he's like directionless, quarter-life crisis. But yeah, so he undergoes a ceremony to find purpose. So he goes like does a Burning Man thing. I don't know. But he stumbles the moon's light. It says guides him to a pool of noctum flowers, which are very poisonous. And when he drinks the poison, he is opened to the night's power, and he's also, it says, numbed to everything else. And apparently, it hurts super fucking bad. That's the other thing. Is like the pain is so great that you can't do anything apparently but be open to the moon's power. So right around when this happens, the legendary temple called Maris Omegnum. Does that sound right from that temple name?
Yes, Maris Omegnum, I think, is right.
Yeah, so this legendary powerful temple is phasing back into reality from the spirit world after at least a couple centuries. And the Lunari see this as the celestial heavens, whatever, kind of shifting towards them in their favor. Like the tides are kind of turning. And so they select Alune it's not clear. It says she's going to occupy the temple. Like, is she a battery? Like a pilot? Like, how does it?
I think the way it
It's not quite
works is
clear.
that the temple only allows, every time that it comes back into existence in the physical realm, it only allows one person inside, and it kind of chooses
Yeah.
someone who's worthy of being there. And I think actually, like, I don't necessarily think it usually phases right back out of existence and into the spirit realm. I think that was something that Alune made it do to protect it from the Solari. But I'm jumping ahead.
yeah.
Continue.
I was going to say spoiler. It's fine. We're about to get to it. But so she is selected. It's not. I find it to be a little vague, but she's selected to go occupy it, and whatever that means. And
She's chosen.
Aphelios requests to be there. She's chosen. She's a chosen one. She's born of children of destiny or whatever. And Aphelios is there at the ritual, and while they're doing it, the fucking Solari show up. So of course the Solari start raining down on the Lunari, and they seem to get the better hand. They don't kill Aphelios. They say he's beaten and that his weapons are destroyed and he's bleeding from the mouth. So it's not clear if he was on the verge of death or dying, but they've certainly lost the day. But Alune goes to the heart of the temple, and when she gets there, similar to how Aphelios got open to the Knight's power when he took the Noctum, she's open to the Knight's power, and all of a sudden they can feel this, essentially this connection between the two. They level up as twins, right? They get the true spirit link, and he can start hearing her voice, and he can sense her presence, and she pushes this weapon into his hand, and he just fucking kills all the rest of the
Fucking wreck
Solari.
shit.
He just, yeah. It's very much like they both unlocked their true potential as this sort of set of moon twins. I don't know, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah,
right? Moon and Knights.
Alune just had to go to a temple, and Aphelios has to constantly drink poison.
Constantly drink.
But she's got to be
absolutely near
alone in the
mind-numbing.
temple.
I guess that's
That's
true.
Gosh, we can talk about that in a fucking second. But so as a result of that, like you said, yeah, Alune bops the spirit temple, or the temple, back to the spirit world, so it's safe from attack, and she resides there, relatively solitary. I guess Yumi shows up, apparently, according to her
Really?
quotes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's which again we'll talk about in a second. But so while she's doing that, Aphelios acts as an assassin, and specifically the poison that's in him acts as a focus for her powers on the physical plane, we'll say. And so that's how he manifests all those weapons, and
Yeah,
that's what they're up to.
I guess
apparently.
it's the way that she can connect with him. It is like a true bio. It's very vague in a lot of places.
yeah.
It's a bummer. Like, they're like, oh, she can only reach out to him through a focus. Like the poison. Are there no other focuses?
Yeah, I like
Any other focus?
maybe
Come
their
on.
shared bloodline, like just anything.
Those moon blades, maybe?
Yeah, it's, who knows, right? I mean, obviously it's just there so that it's there as a narrative device, right? It's a little overt, I guess I would say.
It's there to make
That's
him
kinda
a
my
mute
read on it.
so that she can speak through his mouth, basically, in game.
So is he a mute 24/7? Is it only when he's under the effect of the poison? I found conflicting reports on this.
I thought it was only when he was under the effects of the poison.
I would assume so.
That would seem to be the case. But on his little blurb on the universe page, it just says he's a mute. It just says it just outright, as if that's the case constantly. So I don't know. But
Oh, that's a very specific thing, a mute. So I don't know.
yeah. Plus those blurbs are they're very high level, and I would trust something that's more specific to one of these stories more than that in general. So
How did we feel about his bio? I felt it had very fan fiction vibes to me. Just like the psychic bond with somebody is a huge fan fiction trope, and then the angst of needing the poison and this twin separation thing
I am but a vessel.
is exactly
Yeah.
it.
yeah,
I will
would
say,
agree.
having not known much about his lore, but knowing the basic gist of these weapons are essentially, I guess, his sister. I thought that his sister was dead, so I was happy to find out that she's not technically dead. That was a nice change of pace
Yeah.
for stories.
I mean, she is in the spirit
she's just
world.
practically dead. She's just for all purposes dead, except she's there something.
Yeah, she can come back out whenever she wants. Maybe. Who knows how that temple
Maybe.
works?
Yeah, I Yeah, this reminds me a lot of the situation with Aatrox. A lot of edge between them, which I think might be an issue. I kind of like Aphelios a bit more, but he does teeter. He teeters very heavy on falling into the very bad edge category of Aatrox, and
Yeah.
I don't know why he's not there. There's something about him that keeps him from falling off entirely. But man, he's a thin fucking thread.
I think his relationship with the Loon makes him a little bit more interesting, and I find that interesting. They're kind of borderline toxic codependent relationship that they have.
Wow, literally toxic. I guess.
Quite literally toxic, I
Jeez.
suppose.
It's a metaphor, man. Come on.
So I find that to be the most interesting part of both of them. I mostly just like, I think because I don't have a heart in the battle between the Solari and the Lunari, I have a hard time like getting invested in what they're fighting for, because I still don't get it. Like, what do you mean the moon's sapping power from the sun? That doesn't make any sense.
I mean, we believed that in this world for a while, I'm sure. So, like, you know, maybe it doesn't make sense scientifically, but they're also like priests living on a mountain, and they don't. This isn't Piltover.
I completely agree with you, Rebecca. I'm totally divested from this conflict, and I was really hoping, because he would be so new, because God, Diana is pretty old at this point, and I know she's got I feel like she's got a strong following. I think people are really invested in Diana and Leona for being such. You know, it's a very specific little conflict between the two. There's not a lot of. It's not like Demacia and Noxus, where they've got multiple champions who fit in different spaces. I think there's something about those two that people really like. I was really hoping to get more about the Lunari here, and there's not, so I don't care. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I get
I don't
it.
know.
I get it.
There were a few interesting bits that I think were either alluded to or kind of talked about in not a whole lot of detail. In regards to how the Lunari stay hidden too, I think that's kind of an interesting connection to, you know, you mentioned Aatrox, like it seems kind of weird that the Lunari, who are super outnumbered by the Solari, manage to just kind of stay in, as they say, like the shadows of Mount Targon and then not be hunted, especially given that there are huge amounts of Solari specifically dedicated to hunting them. But it's kind of thought that the kind of in the shade might be a reference to them actually using the moon's power to kind of veil themselves, kind of like a temporary shift to the spirit zone to keep themselves safe from the Solari, which is kind of how the Darken were essentially trapped in their weapons in the first place, was kind of by using the power of the moon to pull them into the spirit realm to make them easier to trap within their weapon vessels.
Now that's interesting. I feel like I wish maybe this is something that we'll just get to when we hit more Targonian champions, but I could definitely see that being an interesting way of connecting the current kind of warped persecution of the Lunari from maybe some sort of historical founding, where at some point the power of the moon getting associated with the Darken and all that shit. You could see how people might twist it over, you know, eons, right? That's interesting. I did not know that. Should we talk about the story then, I guess, as well? I feel like that's also kind of gives us some other things to talk about with that.
Yeah, it's pretty short. It's called You Are the Weapon. It's by David Slagle.
Yeah, so it opens on Aphelios doing his not Tai Chi. That's I was gonna say kata, practicing his kata. He's playing with his sword, as it were, his moon sword.
He's
I knew
doing
we'd
a
get
play.
there eventually.
Let's not make it too deep. He was playing with a sword.
He is playing with his sword and kind of quasi-meditating and angsting a little bit. And as he's doing that, so during this story, we have brief instances of Alune speaking to Aphelios that are separate from the main text, and they are written in the second person. So we can that's the first instance of that happens, and he gets a vision of an outlander that he doesn't recognize. And as soon as that happens, the moon's light guides him to the Noctum poison, which is it's like a bat signal in the way that it's kind of described. It's like,
That's
the moon's
shitty.
light is guiding him. Throw up
Time
the
to poison
Aphelios signal.
yourself.
Yeah, right. The moon's light guides you to the poison.
Chop, chop.
Yeah. So he downs it and is consumed, racked with pain. But but also kind of establishes his connection with Alune, and she manifests his gravitum gun in his hand, and he starts using it. And what probably the coolest little bit of the entire thing, where he's using it to pull in like floating rock islands and pulling them towards him and hop, skip, jumping up them, as it were, which is a nice creative use of that gun.
Yeah.
He eventually gets to wherever it is that he's being led to, and he sees a group of Solari warriors. These guys also sounded cool. They're called Burning Ones, and they're decked out like the Solari normally are. They're gold and spears and shit, but their faces are masked by fire, it says. They're actually in his splash, his default splash. You can see them, and they're pretty cool.
We're gonna look it up.
Yeah, now we're gonna look up his splash now.
But they have surrounded the Outlander that he was shown. So he dives into them, just tears them up. It's not really any sort of issue for him. The whole action sequence there is pretty short, and I was a little disappointed. He uses a couple of the guns, not all of them, and then he sees that the Outlander has a curved scimitar. Spoiler, that's Diana's weapon.
I thought so.
and-
Is Aphelios not on? Okay, no, finish the story. Sorry.
Sure, yeah. No, this is a big reveal at the very end. Now this is actually, I do need to ask also, he sees this and then something happens and he kills the Outlander, but he seems to not want to. I am not clear why he killed him and what compelled him to kill him. It seems like Alune says very specifically, you have to, you need to kill him. You know why, right? She seems to be kind of saying you need to do this even though you don't want to. And he does, and they have the scimitar afterwards, and he says he doesn't outright say it's Diana, but they say it's hers, and that she's running, and and Alune again specifically says we need to find her. So it ends with them seemingly potentially searching for, or hunting for, or chasing after. The context is not really clear, but in the trail of Diana. So that's really what goes on in that. It's a pretty short story, but a few big things pop up at the end there, I guess we'll say.
Yeah, I was just mostly confused because I had assumed Aphelios and Diana would be on the same side.
I think they are. I think there's kind of there are several champions right now that are essentially searching for Diana. Diana, I think over the course of a few of the stories is on a mission of her own, and no one kind of knows what that mission is or why, or she's on the run. I think she did a few murders, so maybe that could be why she's on the run, or she could have her own, mission. But I know that Leona's looking for her, Nami's looking for her, Aphelios is looking for her. Everyone's out kind of looking for Diana. I think last we heard she's on her way to Ionia or something like that.
Great. Yeah. Whenever Diana's not on the screen, every character should be asking, "Where's Diana?
Where in the world is Diana?"
Diana.
It's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell, and I think a big question that I have that affects the context, like how you see this ending, is how toxic and how manipulative do we think the relationship is when it comes to Alune and Aphelios? You had said codependent, but I would say drop the co. It's just dependent. Like, she seems entirely fine, but as soon as she's gone, Aphelios falls apart. And she seems to, given this, and did y'all listen to the login theme, by the way? I guess I want to ask, because that's lyric.
I had before.
It's one of the few lyric logins.
I didn't. God, they love lyricking their Lunari logins, huh?
I was going to say, Diana, the first one, and of course, I think they said, yeah, we got to do it. There's not much there. There is a single line where she says, because it's all her singing, right? And what is it she says? Soon you'll be set truly free from all those chains you bear. Which to me seems like saying, oh, you're going to die from this poison soon, and then you'll be kind of free of your burden. Everything that I've seen from Alune seems to depict her as someone who's much more in the know with what's actually going on, and is just kind of using Aphelios, even if she doesn't want to. Like, she cares for him, but at the end of the day, he's a tool. He's a weapon, right? So
Literally called one.
Weapon.
Yeah.
yeah.
So she's kind of like the Doctor Strange, kind of seeing everything from all the angles and not really giving the answers. Just
all the ankles. Like, she's really short and just looking at everybody's ankles.
Yeah, that is interesting. I would like to just know more about the relationship at all, so we could kind of pinpoint, who's reliant on who here, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I guess bringing it back to this story and the ending with Diana, I have it's hard to tell where Diana sits, at least from my perspective, when it comes to the Lunari, because I can see where they could go with the Lunari, because one thing we know is that they're coming back into power, right? Is what we've been told from. That's the big other thing I think we learned from the bio specifically, is that the tides are shifting, and the Lunari are going to be probably the ones in power soon, right? Or at some point in the future, the heavens are changing. Does that sound right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think it gives the Lunari a lot of opportunity to end up being just as bad as a Solari. And I think looking at just what Aphelios is and how they leverage him is already something that a lot of people would take umbrage with, right? You've got a kid who's been, raised up to do this stuff to himself. Killing people when he seems to very clearly in the story have not want to, for lack of a better, So I don't know.
Yeah, I think some of the kind of relationship between Diana and the moon too, through some of Aphelios's voice lines, is kind of interesting too. Like, I think there are a couple lines that have to do with Diana. One where like Alune mentions that Diana knows the name of the moon, kind of implies that like the moon itself may be, not just like a magical moon, but like might actually be like a godlike entity, which also another one of her lines is the moon was with us in darkness, but it is not there for us, kind of like speaking to a potential sentience and higher power of the moon that's there, but maybe not necessarily on their side, but exists and grants them power.
Yeah, it's weird because with Targon you've got aspects and celestials. I don't know if they're the same thing exactly, but they seem to be some sort of entity or intelligence that exists in that space, and kind of possesses people in a way. And Diana being an aspect of the moon would seem to kind of carry with it that she is. That again, she's been imbued with that intelligence, whatever it is. Same with the sun when it comes to Leona, I guess. Real quick, can anyone name all of Aphelios' guns? I named one, and there were two more in the story.
Did Graviton.
I can't do it. I certainly can't do it.
I can't, and
Is Crescendum one of them?
Crescendum is one of them. That's the lifesteal gun, I'm pretty sure.
I mean, I don't think
the long range
so.
one.
Maybe it's
right?
not. Yeah. See, I have my own names
I can
for
describe them.
Yeah, I can describe most of them.
Yeah.
What do you call them?
There's flamethrower gun.
Yeah, the blue one. I call
Flamethrower gun,
I call the purple one the stun gun. That's Graviton one, and then he's got his Caitlyn gun, which is the long range one. I just call it the Caitlyn gun. And
Solid.
then he has the turret gun, which is the chakram one.
Yeah, solid.
And then the life steely gun, which I think I just call the life steely gun.
And then flamethrower.
And then
right?
I call that one the splash gun, not the flamethrower. I do understand that it's a flamethrower, but I just call it the splash gun.
Splashy splash.
It doesn't read as a flamethrower. It reads like a big water gun.
It's blue. Make it fucking red. If
Big
it's, are you
super
serious?
soaker.
If it's, it took me forever to realize it was a
flame
flamethrower.
Is blue.
I know,
It's really hot.
but when you see something splashing out of a gun and it's blue, are you thinking, "Ooh, that's fire"?
That's
or do you
real
think,
hot fire. That's what I think when people spray me with actual water guns too. Like, it's real hot. Oh no, this is just water. We're good. But there's that moment of panic.
All right, I'm gonna look up his guns.
Okay, well, yeah, I know Crescendum, Gravitum.
Severum's the lifesteal
Severum's
gun.
the lifesteal one.
Calibrum is the Caitlyn gun.
Fuck.
And Infernum is the splash gun.
And sever.
We should have been able to guess that. That's a pretty easy one. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I certainly don't remember him. I was curious. I thought you might be able to do.
I don't know his real. I don't know the
There we go.
names. It's like any champion I play. I don't know the names of their abilities generally either.
Yeah,
Not like
that's
the real
fair.
ones.
Especially, I think a lot of Aphelios players too. They just memorize the colors.
Yeah, I just know
They're
the
like,
colors.
oh yeah, we just
That's
gotta have blue and white on standby.
Yeah, because you
Whatever
can't
the hell
assume.
the OP combo is. I don't play for all.
Yeah, your whole team's not going to necessarily remember them, but they'll know the colors.
Well, you're not going to type out in chat. Don't worry, I got Gravitum in 3 or whatever the fuck.
Everyone will be like, "What the fuck? What do you mean?" That may be the only one they know.
This fucking
Actually,
guy quit RPing Aphelios. Yeah. Okay, so for the story that Outlander barbarian that gets killed, it's said he's decked in crimson and iron. So is he a Noxian? This would be something they'd probably dress up in, red and iron. That's kind of their colors.
Maybe. I was really, I mean, I was excited to learn that was to do with Diana at the end, and I was proud that I understood that. But I just felt so confused by, like, who is this fucker, and why are we killing him? I just didn't understand, and I don't know who he is.
And why is he here?
Why is he here?
Like, Mount Targon is pretty remote. Like, you're not going to accidentally find your way to Mount Targon. Like, if you go there and you happen to have Diana's, scepter, like, you were probably there for that, but you didn't just stumble across it. Like, what does someone from Noxus want with the scepter? What does anyone want with the scepter, really? It's been too long since I've read Diana's lore. I don't know what specific powers her scepter had.
Yeah, I don't know. I poked around in it a bit to see if I could get anything that would deal with Aphelios, or at least the Lunari, and I didn't find much. You are right that she did commit some murders on her way out, in sort of an accidental kind of way.
Some oopsie murders.
Some murders.
Yeah.
Oops, all murders.
Oopsie deadsies.
Oops, all murder. Oh man, you fucked me up. Yeah, I don't know. It paints her in my mind as someone who might be fleeing both the Solari and the Lunari. Because Diana's whole thing, even in the new lore, has always seemed to be about there need to be a balance. And if you saw the Lunari on the come up, and maybe they decided, fuck balance, man, we're gonna take our fucking share, right? All of a sudden now Diana, aspect of the moon, who's preaching the opposite, suddenly becomes a heretic in both camps, right? And I don't know. I can see it. Maybe Aphelios, and then Aphelios gets forced to hunt someone down, and I don't know. Could be interesting.
Because the people who've spent the last few generations being hunted aren't going to be like, all right, yeah, we'll go 50-50s then.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for that. I will say, talking about that, and I know this is not that much related to Aphelios, but it makes me a little disappointed that Leona is the aspect of the sun. I think there being a power disparity there, with Diana being an aspect and her just being like a paladin, like a mage warrior of the Solari, would be a nice way of echoing this transition and imbalance of power. But I guess it's fine. They can just be yet again another pair who's just hate each other in League. League is all about pairs. I don't know what their deal is.
It's true.
It's so that they can sell those posters that have two champions on them back to back.
This shit sells, man. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think Aphelios falls under the category that we keep having of there's so much potential there, and we just aren't been given enough. But it's still only been a year.
Yeah, there's definitely... I'm not disappointed yet by Aphelios. There's still a lot of opportunity there. They haven't passed the time threshold of...
Like Aatrox?
Yeah, where they've clearly given up.
That hope will be there for another year and a half. Oh, man. I was just going to say, you got to think about it on it's almost like a cosmic scale when it comes to League lore. It's like a year is nothing.
That's true.
Nothing is a baby.
Yeah. I think Aphelios really lends himself to skins, and he only has one crappy one that I don't understand. So what League or typical skin do you think would be good with Aphelios? I kind of like the school one. I feel like he would fit. Aphelios and Alune would have fit into that the school lore that they have.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Male K-pop.
Oh my god, he does look like a K-pop star.
He does.
Him. You throw Chezreal in there. Who else? Who else would be in that? That's the real. We need to put that together.
Set I could see.
Oh, Set.
Yeah.
He'd be the strong, silent bad boy. Yeah.
Man, we're making our own K-pop group.
You're welcome.
We'll put this together. We'll pitch it to Riot.
So Set, Ezreal, Aphelios. We need one more.
Maybe there's certain Vlad skins that I
was thinking Vlad, actually. That's really funny.
Yeah, Vlad's good. Vlad's a great pick. Yeah.
I think he's...
I don't know. I don't know enough about the genre.
I could see that.
Is it going to be like how Ari did her own side
Yeah.
project or whatever, or I don't remember
It'll be
who it was
within
that
the
did.
Giants
It was
universe.
Ari.
It just kind of split off.
Yeah.
Or a collie split off to do Giants.
Everyone's in at least.
Oh.
Everyone has at least like somebody who's between two groups. I love it. That's a great pick. Yeah, that really rounds it out, frankly.
Now, there are a few other kind of interesting voice lines that Aphelios has too. And if you haven't
Alune.
played Aphelios, yeah, I was going to say, all of his voice lines are actually just Alune speaking.
Oh, you wrote them down. Okay.
Well, I didn't write all the quotes down necessarily, just like who they were from and kind of what they were alluding to.
Okay, interesting. Because I was actually trying to look up a soundboard because I really want to listen to her now because I do feel like Alune is maybe borderline really manipulative, and now that we've kind of talked about that, I'd like to hear, because she's very much like, I'll always be here for you, Aphelios, just like constantly reassuring him as he's poisoning himself.
Alune, based on the voice lines that I listened to, like we were talking about, Alune does not seem like one of those 50-50 types of people. She definitely seems like she's the time of the moon's power is now type person.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I do think that she is depicted in a way more, like you said, kind of caring Rebecca. She's a little bit more bright and bubbly in a way that I don't think matches the lore or the intro song. I think the intro song is way more dark and ominous. And then in the quote, she's sitting there talking about, oh, when Yumi comes to visit me, oh, and I miss the sound of rain. It's like, girl, what the fuck, man? Check yourself a little. Shit.
But then she also says, the Solari call us heretics, but when the darkness comes, they will need our light. Which is also kind of hinting at another darkness that's on its way, which I feel like is hinted at with almost all of the champions we've read about the lore so far. But
Kill the sun.
Well, it's interesting that in our Anivia discussion, I think I called the Watchers the final boss of Runeterra, but I think Aurelian Soul and his dragon friends could also be a contender for that.
Ooh.
Which I did not really realize till playing. I played a bunch of Runeterra because they have Lunari and Solari cards to see if I could find anything out.
That's why you've been playing it.
Well, it's also fun. I did enjoy getting back into it, but there is a Lunari card where it creates a flower that you can use for some shit, but it's not Noctem. It's a different thing called Dusk Petal. But it does seem like the cultivation and use of flora for various magical things in Lunari is an actual tradition that they've kind of echoed in that. And there's the other big thing with Targon is they've got all these Celestial Dragon cards, and they're big cost bombs. And I don't know, it seems like maybe the dragons could be a potential large scale threat at some point.
because Aurelian Soul's already just super pissed off at all the aspects, so he's got a bone to pick.
Talk about somebody who's going to blow up the sun. Shit.
So one of the other lines that was kind of interesting was one about Soraka. Oh god, I didn't write down the specific line, but it was something about Soraka knows our pain and she wants to end it and sever our connection or something like that.
Oh, that's interesting.
She knows our pain, but she wants us to deny it, right?
Yes, tells us not to feel it, to deny ourselves.
Yeah.
Specifically.
So that was interesting because, I mean, just super high level, I guess just Soraka wants to end all pain on Runeterra. That's, I guess, just kind of her thing.
Cool.
But in theory, if that happens, that is the one connection that Aphelios has to Alune. So if she actually succeeds in ending pain, then Alune no longer has any way to reach out to Aphelios.
Yeah, it sets them in. It's an interesting. See, that's an interesting conflict to set, right? To put in motion, and I find that much more intriguing, just that premise, than a lot of the other conflicts that we've kind of highlighted here. It's an interesting one I didn't think about. You know what I liked from his quotes? Is that there are a number of them that are just Aphelios hyperventilates.
What?
That's how they're written in the wiki. There are a lot of the times he's just breathing heavily, and it is written as Aphelios hyperventilates.
Oh, I'm seeing it now. Okay, I'm looking at it too.
Someone needs to get him a brown paper bag.
That'd be a good skin. The every
Social
time he
anxiety of
respawns,
Aphelios.
like on the fountain, he also downs some of that poison, which is an interesting thing that I had never noticed before actually reading the lore.
I did not know that.
Now I gotta see that.
Now I gotta watch. We gotta go play Arium, and someone's gotta die a bunch of Aphelios so we can all see it.
Yeah, he chugs the poison and then
That's
smashes
dope.
the bottle on the ground.
Shit, Aphelios, calm down, bro. It's not a beer.
He just crushes the
Shotguns
empty
it.
glass bottle on his forehead.
Can't feel it anyway.
Oh, they should do it like a Broloff skin. They should bring that shit back, and he's
damn.
smashing beer.
Yo, that's so dark.
Brophelios.
Aphelios. Oh my
All right,
god.
fuck the KDA skin.
Yeah. Fuck it. Scrap it. Throw it in the garbage.
Oh man, that's funny.
You know, I will say the other thing. I want to talk a little bit. One other thing about that story. Is I was a little disappointed in it as an action piece because I feel like they didn't use what I find really cool about Aphelios is the fact that he can manifest the weapons, not all the different things the guns do. That's whatever, but the fact that he can just have them and just kind of use them interchangeably. Now think about the fact that that means he can bring weapons into like secured areas where they're like completely scot-free. I would love to see him try and assassinate like some high Solari guy in the middle of a temple in broad daylight in public and have to see him use all those guns and pull them out of thin air to get out. I don't know, something that really used that part of it more. I don't know.
Yeah, it was definitely really interesting to read. I normally don't always love reading fight scenes, just kind of depending, but I did find myself wanting that to be a little bit more detailed, a little bit longer. Because I do remember a line where he gets rid of one weapon and he puts his hand out knowing that another one's going to be there. And Alune puts it there just knowing that he's going to put his hand out. And I find that very cool that they're so connected that, yeah. So that was a very good visual in that part of the fight scene. And it was very cinematic and I liked that a lot. But it was too short and then it was just over.
Yeah, I would have loved either
Yeah.
I know cinematic is probably too much to ask for, but like a little illustration would have been pretty cool even.
Yeah. A little single page thing. Give me one of those Riot animation workshop things where it's super rough but still super cool. Oh, that'd be great. I'd love it.
Right. If you're listening, Thunderdome animators, just animate this scene.
Or another story.
All these things. Do all these things that we're suggesting. Do all of it.
I'd like to explore
Thank you.
a longer story with the two of them. I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
There is a small teaser cinematic that we kind of talked about a little bit. There's not really much there. I think it's less than a minute. And it was when he was, I guess, getting released, I think.
Yeah, he's just like pulling out the weapons.
Yeah.
There we see him doing that Noctum as well. Again, doing that Noctum day and night, man.
Playing with his gun.
Playing with his guns.
And
He's
swords.
got quite the collection, I will say. I was going to say, in terms of what I might like to see, would be something about them before, like when they were kids, something when they were younger. Something would help define why this relationship is so impactful to Aphelios, because it's like, what's going on with their parents? I assume they're Lunari, maybe they're dead, maybe they're, who knows, right?
Yeah. I really want something from Alune's point of view as well, to know if she is just as dependent on Aphelios that he is to her, you know what I mean? Like, did she want to leave him when she had to go, or was that just as hard for her as it was for him? Because Aphelios kind of fell apart when they separated for the first time, which I understand. They've been together probably every minute since they've been born, since before. So
Yeah, for
I'd be
sure.
interested.
It would help answer some of these questions we have as to how should we like, as to whether or not we should be despising her or not. How much of a victim is she relative to how much of a victim Aphelios is.
Well, I think that's Aphelios.
I think I'm good.
Okay, cool. I was like, how do I do this? Thank you for listening. John and I have another podcast that we do together called A Series of Unfortunate Sequels, where we watch the highest rated movie and the lowest rated movie in a franchise and chat about them. We just took a slight break for Christmas, and we'll get back to it with something. But join us next week when we get to talk about the Frost Archer, Ash.
Bird. Cool.
Brr.
Cool.